Reason why we're learning Gemara, why we have Gemara classes in this school, is when you get married, you can tell your chassan, I know more than you. Okay. It happened once with a girl who got married, and she did know more than him.
Really?
I don't know if it's because of the class, but yeah, I don't know. Okay, so you want to pass this down? Leave me with, I think I have an few extras. Okay, pass this down. Thank you. Now, what I have today is something I never did before. That is Bavli and Yerushalmi. You know what that is? We're going to be learning, I usually would learn about Rosh Hashanah because it's before the holiday, but I'm going to, this year is a very special year. It's a year of Hakel. You've probably heard about that time and again. The gathering of the Jewish people, all men, women, and even little babies would be brought to the Beis HaMikdash, where the Melech, the king, would recite certain portions from the Torah, mainly from Devarim, Deuteronomy, including the beginning of Devarim, Shema Yisrael, the V'hoyim Shemoah, the laws of tithing, the blessings and the curses, and so on. There's a Mishnah. A Mishnah, you know what a Mishnah is? A Mishnah is taught by a group of sages who are called Tanaim. They span the span of about 5 generations, starting from the year 70 ACE, after Chabad entered, after the Common Era. So 70 years after, that's when there was destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. That's around the time when the Tanoim, the group of Tanoim who were the authors of the Mishnah, they're mentioned in the Mishnah, a little bit before that, because there were Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was also a Tana. He actually lived before the destruction and witnessed the destruction. Rabbi Akiva, the Rashbi, Rav Shimon ben Yochai, whom we all know about, Lag Bomer, lived right after the Churban, the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Prior to the Tanoim, we had what we call the Zugos, the pairs. You find in Pirkei Avot, if you learn Pirkei Avot, you'll see that there was pairs of rabbis, of sages, who were quoted in the Mishnah and Pirkei Avot. And they lived, their span went even from before Hanukkah, all the way past Hanukkah until close to the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. I'm not going to go through history because I did it last year, and I don't want to, when I learn some Gemara. It's a short class. I want to learn some inside Gemara learning. So I'm going to, and I want to also show you how the same question that's asked in Bavli, Talmud Bavli, is asked in Talmud Yerushalmi. Now, what does Talmud mean? Talmud means the sages that followed the group of Tanaim. And they're called the Gemara sages, Amoraim. They would comment and try to explain, interpret the words of the Tanaim. An Amora cannot argue with a Tana. If he wants to argue with the Tana, he has to find another Tana, another Mishnah sage that agrees with him. He cannot say, I disagree. It's like us, we cannot say, I disagree with Rashi. We cannot disagree with Rashi, who came much after the Gemara, but he's labeled as someone you cannot argue with unless you have another equal to Rashi that you want to follow. So if you have Rambam and Rashi, and the Rambam and there's no clear ruling as to who's right, you can say, I think the Rambam's view is more acceptable than Rashi's view, or vice versa. Anyways, it needs a lot of introduction, more than I'm going to give you today. So I want to start right away with the Mishnah. Now the Mishnah is in Tractate Sotah, also another tractate, another that I never did before in my 7 years teaching here. I never did, so it feels new to me too, teaching this tractate Sotah. Now, Sotah is not about Hakel. It's not about Hakel at all. It's about a woman who, in spite of her husband's urging and sort of warning, please do not be in isolation with this man, She didn't listen to him. We don't know what she did, but there was some kind of affair, seemingly. We don't know how far she went, and she did seclude with somebody. We don't know the results, so there's a whole procedure of her being brought to the Beis Hamikdash. She has to drink. It's a long story, but that's the name of the tractate. The reason why and how Hakel gets into the picture here is because the previous Mishnah, before the one we're going to learn, discusses all the different things that we read that must be read in Hebrew and those that don't have to be read in Hebrew. So, for example, reciting of Shema, reciting of Shmon Esrei, and the Brachot, Birchat HaMazon, does not have to be in Hebrew. If you know English, in fact, if you don't understand the Hebrew, it's a question whether you're even fulfilling your obligation. But for sure, you can read it in any language you understand. Of course, there's special quality in reading it in Hebrew, so it's good to learn the meaning of the words. But if you don't understand what the Shema is and you only know it in English, you can read it in English. But then it lists all the things that must be read in Hebrew. Amongst them is the bracha of the Kohanim. When the Kohen gives the blessing to all the Jewish people, it has to be in Hebrew. And then it also says, Parshas HaMelech. There are other examples, by the way, besides the example of Birchas Kohanim, there are also other examples of things that have to be recited in Hebrew. A long list. Okay, I won't go through the whole list. But one part I will mention, that is what this mission discusses. The Parshas HaMelech. When the Melech, the king, has to recite the portions from Torah, he has to read it in the Hebrew. He cannot read it in any other language. Okay, so let's start. The Mishnah is on the first page that I gave you. You'll see where it says, on the first page actually is the original. So turn to the second page. This is Bavli. This is a Babylonian Talmud. This Mishnah deals with the mitzvah of Hakel. The Torah, which is what? The Torah's commandment that the Torah be publicly read in the temple, the Beis Hamikdash, at the end of every 7 years on the Sukkot following the Shemitah. So that's actually this year. This year was the year that would be the year for the Hakel gathering to take place. It's the year after the sabbatical year, which was last year, in the presence of the gathered nation. And that includes men, women, and children. The miracle was that everyone heard the king. He stood on a high platform, on a bima, as we'll soon see, but he was heard. This reading was done by the king. The Mishnah above, 32a, relates that this reading was conducted only in the holy tongue, only in Hebrew. This Mishnah now elaborates, marich, the pratim, the details of this mitzvah. So here now is the Mishnah. Parashas HaMelech Ketzad. In what manner was the passage read by the king? How was it done? And the Mishnah tells you the whole procedure, and it also has a story in this Mishnah. You don't have too many stories in the Mishnah. Here you have a story with a certain king. As to what happened, we'll get to the story soon. The Mishnah begins. Following the conclusion of the first Yontif of Sukkot, right after the first day of Sukkot, between first and second day, meaning the night of the second, Bashmini, at the beginning of the 8th. Now that means at the beginning of the 8th year. Shemitah is the 7th year. At the very beginning of the year after Shemitah, which is the 8th year, when b'motza'ei shvi'it, following the conclusion of the 7th, just like we have Motza'ei Shabbat, Saturday night is called Motza'ei Shabbat. So likewise, the Hakel year is called Motza'ei, the end of the 7th of the sabbatical year, meaning that which comes right after. So what would happen? They would make they make for the king a wooden platform in the temple courtyard, in the Azara, which is the courtyard. And he sits upon it. And we'll soon see how is that allowed for anyone besides the king from Malchus Beis David. Here it seems like that we're referring to any king, not just a king from the Davidic dynasty. The Gemara will discuss that. He sits and he reads the Torah while sitting. Normally you read the Torah only standing. Here he was allowed to sit. Now, how do we know when to celebrate this whole procedure of Hakel? Shenemar, Mikate, Sheva, Shonim, B'moed. As it is stated, and the Gemara will get into the details, as it is stated at the end of the 7 years, during the appointed time, etc., etc. But now it's not clear how we know that means the year after Shemitah, but we'll soon see. So what happened? Chazan HaKnesses was a whole procedure. The attendant of the synagogue, like the Gabbai, the one who was in charge of the, well-being of the shul, wasn't the rabbi, but he was in charge. So the attendant of the synagogue takes this Torah scroll, V'nosno l'rosh HaKnesses, and hands it over to the head of the synagogue. That would be the rabbi or the Kohen or both. V'rosh HaKnesses, and the head of the synagogue, Nosna l'Sagan, would give it to the deputy Kohen Gadol, the vice Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol would not be able to do the service. It would have a substitute ready to take over. So he was like second in command. So the rabbi of the shul would give it to the deputy Kohen Gadol. Sagan Nosna the Kohen Gadol, and the deputy Kohen Gadol hands it over to the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol hands it over to the king. All to show honor to the king by having so many different people passing it on to him. And now the Torah is in the king's hand. V'hamelech omed, when he receives the Torah, he stands. The king rises, u'mekabel, receives the scroll from the Kohen Gadol. But how does he read? V'koreh yoshev, but he reads it while sitting down, which isn't out of the ordinary. Now, before the story is told here, the next part of the Mishnah tells you a story. I want to answer your question in a second. I forgot to, before I get to your question, I want to just throw in something about Rosh Hashanah. This year is a special Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because it is, well, this is next year I'm talking about. This year is Hakel. Because it falls on Shabbos and we did not blow the shofar. Why?
Because Shabbos.
So what's wrong with blowing the shofar on Shabbos?
Because in Shabbat,
But one at a time.
in Shabbat you can save life, only save life.
But what are you doing wrong? What's wrong with blowing shofar? Why is that a malacha? Is that a malacha?
No, because it's not to go to two, not to do the two. That if someone don't know, אם מישהו לא יודע להגיד להתבלבל בתקיעת שופר או משהו, אז הוא ייקח את השופר לשאול את חבר שלו, והוא יכול לטלטל.
Yeah, what did you say?
You want him to carry it.
Right, because we're afraid because everyone's obligated to hear the shofar. You might get excited to want to hear it and forget about Shabbos. Take the shofar out here because you don't know how to, not everyone knows how to blow, and carry the shofar in the street. Oops, and violate the Shabbos. And who wants to violate the Shabbos on Rosh Hashanah? So therefore, they stopped this. This is how, according to the halacha. Hasidus has a whole different way of looking at it, which I'm not going to get into right now. But I want to throw something very interesting before we get back to the Mishnah. You know what's so strange about Rosh Hashanah, about the laws, about the mitzvah of shofar? You know it doesn't mention one word about how, with what we use, what we blow with. It does not say in the Torah that on Rosh Hashanah you shall blow with a shofar. It just says blow. Maybe it means blowing with a saxophone or a trumpet. Trumpets are mentioned in the Chumash. It doesn't say the word shofar. And you know what? It doesn't say the word tkiya. It says trua. Know what trua sounds like? That one. The broken sound. There's no mentioning clearly about a tkiya. So strange. It only says pass through. V'ha'avartem, let a sound pass through, called a trua. Pass through, also a strange word. To pass through. Blow. Doesn't say word blow. It says let a sound, a broken sound pass through. Pass through what? What should it pass through? What kind of instrument? Doesn't say. The oral Torah explains what. Here you see how without the oral Torah, you're lost. The Torah is not here to confuse us. Blow with what? Maybe with our mouth. Use our fingers. How do you blow? Scream? Shout? Lo katuv b'shum makom b'Torah. B'Teilim katuv. In Teilim, David HaMelech opens our eyes and he says, Tiku b'chodesh shofar. Finally, he says the word shofar and he says, Tiku, blow. But that's David HaMelech. Where did he get it from? Moshe Rabbeinu. Orally, Hashem gave him the formula of how we know that we have to blow with the shofar. And it's because there's a juxtaposition, a parallel pasuk in the Chumash which does mention shofar, but not about Rosh Hashanah, but about the Jubilee, the Yovel year. There it does say tiku, and it does say shofar. And we have a tradition handed down from Moshe that whatever applies, whatever instrument, and whatever type of sound you got to make on Yovel also applies to Rosh Hashanah. And how many sounds do you have to make? Avartem trua, and pass through a trua, and pass, then it says pass again. Sounds like one sound. We blow 100. Where'd we get the 100 from? And it's not just a custom. So it's a whole long story. It's not a Shulchan Aruch class. I'm not going to get into it right now, but it's kind of strange that Torah leaves such important details for Torah Shabbal Peh, for the oral Torah. There are some beautiful answers I can't share with you right now, but it'll take a long time, as to why the Torah did that. Why by shofar is it specifically unclear as to how to blow? Something else very unclear in the Chumash. So basic. Taras HaMishpacha doesn't mention a word. What did a woman do? Let's say go to the mikveh. Another whole long story. Such important basic left for Torah Shabbal Peh, which is so clear that without Torah Shabbal Peh, without the oral Torah, we are lost. Fill them. And bind them as a sign on your hand. Okay, over here. Black boxes, let's say black boxes, let's say anything. And let them be frontlets between your eyes. So put something over here between your eyes. Rest on Shabbos. What does rest mean? Take a nap? Don't pick up heavy objects? How you know it means? Don't drive, or don't open lights, or don't write. So here we see the beauty of that there are two parts of the Torah. You can't have one without the other. I wanted to throw that in. Okay, anyways, let's go further into the Mishnah. There's a very interesting footnote here, 26. Let's first finish the Mishnah. Agrifas HaMelech, king called Agrifas, and his lineage, it's not clear. Rashi claims that his mother was Jewish. He was from the Herod dynasty. Herod Herdus, the one who did a lot of bad and good. So he was a descendant from that family, but his mother was Jewish. His father was not. His father was considered to be an Eved. So he was sort of he was Jewish, but not a very great lineage. So Agrippas HaMelech Amad the Kibel the Kara Omed. When performing this reading, King Agrippa rose and received the scroll. He rose to receive the scroll. Continue on the next page. And read while standing. Despite the ruling that we just said before, the king may sit while reading. He stood. Shabchu Chachamim, the Chachamim praised him for this pious act. They said, wow, you are special. You don't even have to stand. And you stand, they gave him a lot of credit. Why? He relinquished his royal honor in order to give honor to the Torah. Ukishihigia, when he reached the verse, he was reading from Chumash Devarim, and there it is a verse that says, Leisucha laseis alecha ish nachri. You may not place over you as a king a foreigner who is not Jewish. Ein of Demois. Zolgu, there's a word missing here. Zolgu ein of Demois. His eyes flowed with tears. Amrullah, the people said to him, they said to Agrippa, don't worry about that. You are our brother. Achinu ata, achinu ata. You are our brother. You are our brother. They said it twice. We're not trying to flatter you. We really mean it. You are considered our brother.
Wait, he wasn't a Jew?
So Rashi says he was Jewish, but he didn't consider himself. He considered himself perhaps, his father wasn't Jewish, so he felt.
The king of Israel?
Yeah. We'll see what happens here. So he said he felt guilty. He didn't feel good about himself, and he started crying. They told him, why are you crying? Achinu ata, achinu ata. They said it twice. Saying it once, yeah, maybe you're flattering him. No, we really mean it. You are our brother. Why are you putting yourself down? Okay, we'll get the Gemara has a whole talk about this. Was it right what they did for praising him? Sounds like it was a good thing for them to comfort him. He seemed to be a very, very special person, a good person, and he deserved a lot of credit for standing. So we'll soon see. The Kure, yeah.
There's a question about his mother Jewish background or something. I think it was conversion or just
According to Rashi, he was an absolute Jew. He was completely Jewish. There's no Shaila. According to Rashi, Tosfos. There's a Tosfos in Tractate Yevamos, 45a, that says that his mother was not Jewish. Now, there were two Agrippas, as we'll see in the footnote here, in 38. There was two kings. That could also be a difference. Which one are we talking about? Rashi clearly makes it clear that we're not talking about the first Agrippa. It was a grandfather of the king that we're talking about here. It was also, his name was Agrippa. Look at footnote 38. Since his mother was Jewish, the one we're talking about in our Mishnah was Jewish. See below 41b and note 13 there. There's a whole long story over there. Rashi's assertion that Agrippa's mother was a bona fide Jewess also indicates that he understands the Mishnah as referring to Agrippa II rather than Agrippa I. For Astrobulus, the father of the first Agrippa, Astrobulus was the son of Herod, and the father of the Agrippa I was married to Berenice. She wasn't Jewish. The daughter of Herod's sister. She was Herod's niece, the daughter of Herod's sister, who presumably possessed the same halachic slave status as her brother Herod, non-Jewish, and thus passed it along to her daughter. So the first Agrippa was not Jewish. His mother wasn't Jewish, but the second Agrippa, a grandson, his mother was Jewish. His father wasn't. So this is a continuation to a previous footnote on the previous page. The previous page was also a footnote. What was there?
I thought in those days they was going according to the father. Like if the father was Jewish,
No, that's only before the Torah was given.
before Moshe Kilo?
Before, the time of the Ovos, it's that way, yeah. But after Matan Torah, it's the mother. Father decides on your career, what you do. You're a Kohen, you're a Levi. The mother decides who you are.
But I thought they do it because of the war. Like בגלל שהיה מלחמות, אז הם היו צריכים לדעת אם נגיד היו עושים לאמא משהו, היו עושים אותם.
Okay, now, next part. Bekore, what does he read? What does the king read? Mitchilas Eila Hadvarim Ad Shema. He reads from the beginning of, these are the words, Eila Hadvarim, which is the beginning of the Deuteronomy, of the fifth portion of the Chumash, which begins with these words, Eila Hadvarim, and he reads all the way until the passage of Shema. Anyone know which parsha, the name of the parsha where the Shema is mentioned? It's in Dvarim, that's the fifth Chumash, but which parsha, which Sedra? Anyone know? The second one. What's the name of the second Sedra and Dvarim? Anyone know? Huh? That's Hana, right. And where's V'hayim Shemoah? Not the same parsha, the next week's parsha, which is Akev. Who said Akev? Very good. Very good. Yeah, a lot of boys in yeshiva, they can't even say they don't even ask questions. Unfortunate. But I have to brag a little bit. I have a little 6-year-old grandson who knows all 53 backwards, just backwards. Cute. Anyways. Okay, so what he reads from the beginning of Chumash Devarim until Shema, which is in the second Sedra. Then V'hayim Shema, which is in the third Sedra, that's Akev. And then he reads Aser to Aser Ki Sechal Aser, the laws of tithing. He then reads the parsha of Shema, the passage, and it will be, and if, something's missing here, something's wrong here. And if you will listen, and listen, you will listen, which is V'hayim Shema Tishmu, and the passage you shall surely tithe. That's in which parsha? That's in Re'eh, the fourth Sedra, and then also later on in the seventh Sedra. So we skipped from the fourth to the seventh. And the passage which talks about when you are tithing, if you forgot to tithe first 3 years, you can make it up on the fourth year. That's the seventh parsha. Just had it last week. And then he goes back to parsha number 5, which is the parsha of the laws of the king. Uparashas HaMelech. He goes back and reads the passage concerning the king and the blessing and the curses. Why would he go back, not go in order? Because we want to connect two subjects that are related. Tithing, as mentioned twice, once in Sedra number 4 and once in the Sedra number 7. So we want to get over that subject, and then we go back to the parsha of the king, or the laws of the king, which is in Shoftim. Huh?
Yeah. How if the king, for example, wasn't a Jew, how he first of all didn't.
He was a Jew.
But if you said the first one wasn't.
The first one wasn't. They stole the kingdom. They weren't really. The first one was not wasn't a legitimate king. Wasn't lo haya melech b'dinei malchut, lo haya ganav.
Okay, but
This one was not. This one, he was Jewish. He was Jewish. But we'll soon see that they should not have appointed him as king. We'll soon see that it was not so kosher that they appointed him king, even though he was Jewish, as we'll soon see later on. But he was Jewish according to Rashi, at least. Now, after Gomer Kol HaParsha, he concludes the entire section until he finishes the whole parsha. Now, the blessing that the Kohen Gadol recites after concluding, I see it's missing here. I don't know how this didn't come out right. So let me fill in over here. He concludes the entire section, and then he makes a bracha. The same bracha the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur would make. And that's listed in a different place. Bracha sheKohen Gadol mevarech hasan, hamelech mevarech hasan. The blessing that the Kohen Gadol recites after concluding the reading on the Yom Tov Yom Kippur. There's a whole story about what brachas he would make, and that's enumerated in the previous Mishnah. The king recites them as well at the conclusion of his Hakel reading. Ella, with the exception, shenosing shel regolim tachas mechilas ha'avan, except that he inserts a blessing regarding the festivals in place of the blessing regarding the forgiveness of sin, which is connected to Yom Kippur. So in the previous Mishnah, it does mention the 7 blessings that the Kohen Gadol would say. The king recites the same 7 blessings on the Hakel year, but he substitutes the one for forgiving of sin with the proportion regarding the festivals. Okay. Now, there's a lot of footnote here. Yeah. Let's go to the Gemara. I want to start the Gemara here. The Gemara is puzzled by this Mishnah because the Gemara knows diktuk. Shmini ze lashon lezachar, lashon nekeva. Is that female or male? Shmini.
Female.
Huh?
Female.
Oh.
Shmini.
How do you say the 8th? Shminit. Shminit with a tough.
Really?
The Mishnah says, Shmini, and the Gemara is very puzzled because when it says on the 8th, you read the Hakel is read on the 8th, it sounds like on the 8th day. Because the word Yom in Hebrew is masculine. The word year, Shana, is a nekeva. Yom is a zachar. Shmini, as opposed to Shminit, is also Lashon Zachar. So it sounds like the Mishnah is saying that you read the Parsha of the king on Hakel on the 8th day. The 8th day of Sukkot is read on the first day of Sukkot. So the Gemara is very puzzled. I guess maybe modern Hebrew is different. B'Shmini, Salkadaitach, the Gemara questions one of the terms used by the Mishnah in assigning the time for the Hakel reading. B'Shmini, meaning on the 8th day, can it enter your mind the Mishnah means the 8th day of the festival? We just got finished saying it's on the first day of the festival, or the second day of the festival, not the 8th day. Gemara answers, no, you have to, the Mishnah has to be, we have to edit it, and we have to read Ema Bashminit. Amend the Mishnah and read, instead of Bashmini, which would mean masculine, going on the day, it's going on the year, Bashminit, the 8th year, because the word year is feminine, and Shminit is also feminine. Look at footnote 48 in the bottom, reading the Mishnah Shminit, which is a feminine form of 8th, and thus refer to the 8th year, the year following the Shemitah year. Shmini, if you look at footnote 47, it says the adjective Shmini used by the Mishnah for 8th is a masculine form, and thus modifies and implies masculine noun. Shem davar is a noun by English. Adjectives are Shem HaToar. Shmini is a Toar al Mashu Lashon Zachar. The reference then would be to the 8th day, and that's strange. Okay. Now, Gemara goes on. Why do we need so many different signs as to when to read the Hakel gathering? It's so elaborate. The Chol Hani, why is it necessary for me to have all these seemingly redundant details for the time of Hakel written in the verse? You look back in the footnote, you will see Page 41A, the first page, first English page. You'll see on footnote 31, it tells you the pasuk, and it's translated by Itzav Moshe Osam Lemor. When do we celebrate Hakel? Miketz Sheva Shonim B'Moed Shnas Hashmita B'Chag HaSukkos B'Vo Kol Yisrael. At the end of the 7th year, which is the year of Shemitah, during Chag HaSukkos, when all Jews come. Why so many elaborate details? You can make it much shorter. Why do we need all these details? And the Gemara answers, Tzrichi, we need them all. Why? The ikos of Rachamana Miketz, if the Torah would only write at the end of 7 years without mentioning Shemitah, you know what I would have thought? When did Moshe speak? What year did Moshe Rabbeinu speak? In the 40th year, right before he passed away. The 40th year from when the Jews were in the Midbar. When do we start counting the Shemitah years? When did the count of Shemitah begin? Not right after the Jews entered Israel. 14 years later. The whole count of Shemitah and Yovel started 14 years later. Now, if the Torah would say, Moshe is speaking right now, at the end of the 7th year, I want you to celebrate Hakel. You know what that would mean? 7 years from the time Moshe commanded. And that wouldn't be Shemitah, because Shemitah only started 14 years later. And even then, it was like 21 years later, I should say. They didn't count. The first 14 years when the Jews entered, they were distributing the land, dividing the land and conquering and distributing. Those 14 years were not part of the Shemitah count.
So that's just 2 periods.
Yeah, 2 periods that don't count.
But they didn't got the land yet. Not everybody got the land.
Yeah, I know. So, but Moshe was telling them that when you will count, it would sound like he's saying 7 years from now. He wasn't saying that. He's saying when you will start counting the Shemitah years, just 14 years after you enter. You'll start counting 1, 2, 3, 7 years after that, year 21, in other words. Don't make a mistake and think I mean the 7th year from now. So if the Torah would just say, Miketz Sheva Shonim, at the end of the 7 years, celebrate Hakel, I would think it means 7 years from when Moshe Rabbeinu spoke. That's why it has to say, I mean Shemitah, which is 7 years in your 7-year count, but it's not the 7th year from when Moshe talked. Moshe commanded. Let's see the Hebrew. The Gemara language. The ikos of Rachamana Miketz, if the E means the im, if, katav, that's Hebrew. Rachamana, Mazer Rachamana? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mercy, because Hashem is the all-merciful. So whenever you have in Gemara Rachamana, it means God. We have a song, Rachamana Deyane. Rachamana means God. Who answers? Rachamana is Rachmana Litzlan. You ever hear that language? Rachmana Litzlan, like God forbid, God. So Rachamana, the all-merciful one, is in reference to God. The ikos of Rachamana, if the Torah would have written Miketz, meaning Miketz Sheva Shonim, without the added words of Shemitah, his Torah only at the end of the 7 years and not the Shemitah year. Hava Amina, what does that mean? Hava Amina, Hava means Hayiti. Hava, I would. Amina, think, to say. Like Amar. Amar means to speak, but Amar also means to think before you speak. Also thought, also speech, when you're thinking to yourself. Hava, I would have. Amina, say to myself, I would think. Nimnu, like minion, count. I might have thought that we should count these 7 years from now, i.e. from the time this commandment was given, was said, which was the 40th year after the Exodus. The afagav delop misrami b'shmita, but afagav meaning, and even though, af al-gav does not mean a nose on a back. Literally, af means a nose and gav means a back. But what it really means is even though. Why do we choose the word nose and back? Don't ask me. The af al-gav, and even though, delo misrami b'shmita, even though, I would have thought, even though the 7th year from when Moshe Rabbeinu commanded is not the Shemitah year, I would have thought that's the year you celebrate Hakel and Shemitah. Cost of Rachmana, Shemitah. The Torah made it clear. No. Don't think that's, we don't have that in mind. We have the 7th year, the Shemitah year in mind, which started 21 years after they entered Israel. Therefore, the merciful one, Rachmana, says the Shemitah year to indicate that we are not to begin this count of 7 years until the Shemitah counting begins. Now, okay, so good. So I understand why it has to say Shemitah. Because of Rachmana Shemitah, and if the Torah would only have written the word Shemitah, but given no other hints as to when to read the parsha of Hakel, Hava Amina, I might have still thought that this reading is to be conducted at the end of a Shemitah year, like before Rosh Hashanah, like this coming Friday. Erev Rosh Hashanah, at the end of the 7th year, that's when you are to gather everyone together and hakel. How do I know it's the year later, it's the 8th year? How do I know that it takes place after Shemitah? Maybe it's the very last day of the Shemitah year? Yeah, Shemitah we know, but when? When exactly? Havamina b'self Shemitah. I might have thought that this reading is to be conducted at the end of the Shemitah year, i.e. before Rosh Hashanah of the 8th year. Therefore, we should not make that mistake. Kasav rachamana b'moed. Therefore, the merciful one says, at the end, where there's an appointed time, meaning a holiday, to teach that the reading is to be conducted on a festival. There's no festival at the end of the year. Shana is the beginning of the year already. There's no festival. So it can't be that it's referring to the last day of year 7 of the Shemitah year, because there's no Yontif. Erev Rosh Hashanah is not a Yontif. Okay, so maybe it means Rosh Hashanah. So it has to say Sukkot. Because it would just say Moed, I would think, the first Yontif of the new year, of the year after Shemitah, which would be Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, that's the next part. The ikos of the Moed, have the Torah only written the word Moed, which is the appointed time, meaning the time of celebration of a holiday. Hava Amina, I might have thought that this reading is to be conducted on Rosh Hashanah of the 8th year, but not Sukkot. Because of Rachmana b'chag Sukkot. Now, the ikos of Rachmana b'chag Sukkot, if the Torah would have written that you are to gather together on Sukkot, when on Sukkot? Which day? Maybe it means the end of Sukkot. For Simchas Torah to be a nice time to gather together and make a hakel, or maybe sometimes Chol Hamoed. Hava Amina, that you could even do it. You have a whole 8 days to do this. I might have thought that this can be done even on the last day. Because of Rachmana of a boy called Yisrael. Therefore, the Torah read, no, not any day. The first when you enter, when the Jews first come, that means the first day. So how come we don't do it the first day? How come Hakel was done the second day? So here you have a Rashi Tosfos debate. Rashi says, technical problem. The king needed to stand on a big platform, wooden platform. Can't build. To build before, where are you going to put it? It would take up too much room. A very large platform would take up too much room, and you can't have, space in the base of Hamikdash was very, very important. So you can't, so therefore they had to wait till the day after, after throw only one day yontif. So the next day is Chol Hamoed already, then you can build. Tosfos disagrees with Rashi. He says, no, what are you talking about? It's biblical. The Torah, as we'll soon see, hinted when Jews enter, that sounds like the first day, but then it says b'moed, meaning when you're already in the holiday, meaning when the holiday has already begun, i.e. the night of the second day. You've already witnessed moed. Now you're already in the spirit of the yontif. Now is the best time to do it, i.e. the first night of Chol Hamoed, which is the second day yontif. That's the time to do it. Rashi, however, seems to say that no, the Torah says do it on the first day. And the rabbis said we cannot build, there's a technical problem. We can't build on the second day. We can't build on a Yontif. Can't build before Yontif because that will clog up the space. So we have to therefore wait till Yontif is over. That's a Rashi closes debate. There's a lot to talk about here. I want to finish this, but I don't know how.
All of this is hypothetic.
Huh?
All of this is like hypothetic, or it was the time of the Hamikdash?
Time of the base of Hamikdash. Yeah, sure. Okay, now. Next page. To teach that the reading is to be done at the start of the festival. The start of the festival. Footnote 1, a long footnote, if you can see the foot on the bottom, a very long one. The time that all Israel comes to appear at the temple is the first day of the festival. When is everyone coming? First day. Accordingly, the time for Hakel should really be the first day. This is not possible, however, as the first day is Yontif, on which it is forbidden to construct the platform from which the king reads. Neither can the platform be erected before Yontif, as this would crowd the courtyard on the day that myriads of Jews, myriads means many tens of thousands of Jews will visit. Can't have, it's even more than 770. And boy, 770 is crowded on Yontif. You don't have to ask me. You'll have a whole story as to what happened to Yom Rishana. I'll tell you a little story. Can't finish anyways. I'll tell you a little story. Flew with this. It's like a sardine can. It was, to see the Rebbe below Shofar was an incredible experience. I I need it for bringing for this. But anyway, everyone was getting their place hours in advance. I got a good place, I was extremely happy that I got such a good place. Mom was right before the bima, first row before the bima. The Rebbe is right here, and visual, hear the skier, I could see the Rebbe, and there's something to see. The Rebbe would cry a lot. And during the Haftorah, which is the Haftorah we just learned in the Sikha of Tuesday, the Chana, Rebbe's mother is Chana, don't forget. The Rebbe would cry a lot by that Haftorah. And the Mom would cry like a child. Before the Rebbe would start the Tkiyas, he would have his talis over his head, and all the people's problems of all over the world were under his talis, and you hear him cry like a baby. Mom is crying, and he's singing and digging, and he's crying while he's singing and digging. It's just something to hear. Who would want to hear that? So I was there. I mean, women in the women's section were there 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, waiting. Not only downstairs, upstairs as well. I'm so proud of myself. I got a good spot. It's good to be true. Half an hour goes by, an hour goes by, and it's already up to after Shemon Esrei, Shachris. It's along, and I'm being pushed around here and there a little bit. I push back too a little bit. People much taller than me were getting the better of me, but I'm on the second row right now. Just good fellow. Then it comes Blaney, which precedes the shofar blowing, the reading of the Torah. And it's a little harder, but I'm still in the third row. And a good, perfect view. Then it's at the end of the laning. And now the Rebbe is being called up for the last aliyah. After, what a sight. So the splitting of the Red Sea. The Rebbe would walk up, and then there was people pushed over here. Waves, pushed back and forth like waves. And I'm going up and down. Finally, I'm fourth or fifth row, but I'm still holding. I got back to the third row. Got to the third row, right? Pat myself on the back, figuratively speaking. You're okay, you're doing well. Don't worry. Have me talking. You're okay. And finally, after the mafter is over, a latecomer, a bacher, just woke up who knows when. Looks like he came down from a different planet. 3 times my size, horizontally and vertically. And the whole crowd goes zoom, and I go falling all the way back to the back of the shul, sitting down on the floor with 50 people on top of me. Managed somehow to get up again. I can't even hear the shofar now. Forget about seeing. I feel like, a broken piece of earthenware. Well, I'm not worth. I don't deserve all this. And of course, I had to hear shofar again. I couldn't even hear the Rebbe's keys. Because the Rebbe, even though it's extremely quiet, it's hard to hear if you're that far. It's a long, big shul. The next day, I decided, you know what? I don't deserve to be any closer than I was yesterday. I'll sit in the back. What happened? The exact reverse happened. At the last minute, I was pushed to the front. I guess when you're brokenhearted, that's the best key for all the brachas. There's a whole story of the Baal Shem Tov. You know the Ma'aseh of the Baal Shem Tov? Famous Ma'aseh of the Baal Shem Tov. I'll tell the story about this quick. I know it's like Zev Wolf Kitzis. He was a chassid of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov would blow shofar every year. You could imagine. Shofar of the Baal Shem Tov. Zev Wolf Kitzis is his name. I want you to blow shofar this year. Are you ready to take up? But on one condition, you got to learn all the esoteric explanations of the Arizal. You got to go through this sefer and that sefer. You got to know it by inside out, backwards and forwards. Otherwise, no. Is it a deal? Wow, what a schus to blow in the presence of the Baal Shem Tov or the Baal Shem Tov himself. Didn't know what he did to deserve all that. Anyways, fast forward. Time for shofar is already. So the last minute, he wants to take out his notes. He wrote notes from before. Just to review all his notes he wrote about the kavanah you have to have when you blow shofar. Hey, where is it? Can't find his notes. And maybe on the floor, looks on the floor. What happens when you do that? What's the reaction in the shul? One word. No. Everyone's knowing him, getting him even more nervous, and he starts to panic and forget about it. He's giving up on that. No. And he has to blow shofar with no kavanah. He has nothing. He starts blowing, and he feels like he's going through a crisis in his life. It's torture. It's not mama's torture. He's Baal Shem Tov said you have to have the kavanah and nothing. He feels like he's betrayed the Baal Shem Tov. Every sound was an ordeal. He finishes, he hides. Hopefully, Baal Shem Tov won't even see him. Shem Tov comes out, goes, looking for someone. He's looking for you. Oh no. He runs out, goes onto the floor, and begs with Mechila. Baal Shem Tov says, Zev, you're asking Mechila? I want to let you know that there's keys, there's a key in heaven for everything. The key for Torah, key for tefillah, key for song. You gave me the master key. With your brokenheartedness, your shofar, I was able to have the master key to places in heaven I never saw before. Thank you so much. Here is how brokenheartedness is followed by a wow. Roller coaster of feelings, Wow. I have a schus to lower shofar. And then back up again. Like the tkiya, the trua, and the tkiya. Anyways, have a wonderful Shabbos. Probably your Shalmi will be probably after the next one.
If you don't want to the course,